Hello and welcome to Lithgow City Raceway, home of the Combined Districts Kart Club. My name is Matt Nippers from Go Race Promotions, and we are bringing you the finals actions for the last round of the Go Race Promotions season. Coming up straight away is the 4SS Light Class from the New South Wales 4SS Thundersport Tour. As the championship unfortunately is over, this is just a race for pride. Paul McKinnon is your 2019 championship winner. So, unfortunately, this won't be a hugely important race. But Brad Calden, right there, starting in third, he came second. He will be looking to build up some confidence ahead of this next season in 2020. So, a bit of a disappointing end to the year for him after getting caught up in some accidents early in the day. Richard King, he has wrapped up third in the championship, and he's had a fairly strong day as well. He starts on the front row, right next to this man coming up, I believe. It is Aaron Lewis, better known as AJ in the pits, or left foot if you prefer, running the number 55 Birrell, starting out of fifth. AJ's had a bit of an up and down year, but if any consolation, he has won the Silver Trophy, an initiative aimed at new drivers into the sport, which will continue in 2020. As we look at Paul McKinnon, there is the benchmark starting out of pole. He is our champion for 2019, and he is just looking to make a perfect day. 4 wins once more. He's been absolutely dominant this year. As we look at Jeff Amir starting out of 10th in the number 46 Red Speed Torini package, as we get set for a start. So, for the final race of the year, let's have a look through the grid. Paul McKinnon starts out of pole position. Next to him, Richard King. On the second row, Brad Calden, number 4, and Richard Druga in the number 69 starts out of 4th. Aaron Lewis in number 55 will start out of 5th, while Daniel Zammit in the first of the Hoof-Hearted Racing Karts will start out of 6th. Oliver McLansborough in the number 34 will start out of 7th, while Matt Sydenham will round out the 4th row of the grid. Ethan Bowton in the number 96 and Jeffrey Amir will make up the 5th row of the grid. Chris Barry in the number 6 will start out of 11th, with Daniel Douglas Baker starting beside him. Number 22, Paul King, will start out of 13th, while Amit Ramdev will start out of 14th. And a few other drivers will be making their way out, with Robert Dixon and Drew Hamilton rounding out your starters, with Anthony Bihagia unfortunately not able to make the grid. Unfortunately, the Bihagia brothers had a bit of a shocking season in their first season of racing. Unfortunately, a bent axle in the pre-final ended his racing day, unable to repair that Evo kart. So we do seem to be having a few problems with our camera, not able to get to focus. I'm sure we'll give it a quick reset, and with the power of editing, or the magic of editing, we are back. We are back and looking at a field that is forming up. I think there's a few stragglers still trying to catch up to the field. Yep, it's Greg Dixon and Paul King. They're trying to catch up to the back of this 16 kart field, as we watch Paul McKinnon and Richard King on the front row of this grid. Looking good for a start. Brad Calden, he'll be looking just to try and probably put it up the inside of Paul McKinnon going into the first corner, as we are set for a start. Oh, that's an early move from Richard King, and that will not be a start. Probably a little bit too fast as well from Paul McKinnon, but nonetheless, we are going around one more time. So all the drivers acknowledging that they will be taking the cut through. So once more, the 4SS light field are getting set for a start. And Paul McKinnon looking very relaxed, and as he should be relaxed. He is not fighting for the championship. He has already wrapped that up. So no matter what, Paul McKinnon is going to be your champion in 2019. He could bin it in the first corner and he will still be the champion. As as the field is looking a little bit better this time round. As they come onto the main straight, all the carts are in the tram lines as we are lights out and racing. McKinnon misses the start big time as it looks like Richard King will take the whole shot going through turn 1 as they make their way through turn 2 and 3. As it looks like Daniel Zammit has made a blinder of a start. He's up into 3rd position, so that's the first of the hoof-hearted racing cars. The number 12, powered by a Briggs & Stratton engine. As speaking of power, Paul McKinnon just breezes past Richard King going into the hairpin, as now Richard King will have to deal with Richard Druger and Daniel Zammit behind him, as I think Druger has made the move on Zammit. No, he has not. Oh, I think I saw a cart going off the track in the background there that looked like the number 55 of Aaron Lewis. So that is a real shame for Aaron. He's had an absolutely disastrous year at times. As now Richard Druger finally gets the move done on Daniel Zammit in the number 12 as Oliver McLansborough looks to make a move, but he's positioned himself horribly. Brad Calden makes the move going through Siberia. So now Brad Calden, I don't know what happened to Brad Calden. He's had an absolute shocker, but he just dives up the inside of Daniel Zammit. That opens up the door for Oliver McLansborough to go through. So already action aplenty in the first opening laps of the 4SS final. So now Brad Calden tucks up behind the steering wheel, trying to make his body as small as possible behind that NASA panel as we refocus back on Paul McKinnon. Just going through the motions. It looks like he's done a million laps of this circuit, knows it better than the back of his hand, and he is already stretching the gap to Richard King. Quick look over his shoulder coming out of Siberia and again out of the hairpin. It looks like McKinnon is just managing that gap. As we look at Richard King, he is just doing everything he can to hold on to the back bumper of the number 17. As McKinnon, another look over his shoulder, he's just managing the gap at the moment. McKinnon running the MCK cart, that's the McKinnon competition cart, his own cart, the cart he has built himself, making its debut in the tour in the final round. As the, don't know what our cameraman was doing there, he just seemed to lose the field there, as it looks like Brad Calden has made his way up to 3rd. He has indeed, so that's a strong recovery as well. Daniel Zammit runs off the track, a big shake of the head from the number 12. Zammit has lost a lot of ground on the to Oliver McLansborough on the number 34 as Calden tucks up again behind the steering wheel. So I'm not really sure why Calden had such a bad start, but he is way down and he is now at a huge disadvantage trying to catch Paul McKinnon. Although McKinnon just does not look bothered. He is looking so relaxed out there. He's won the championship. He knows he has won this championship. Now he is just going for full demoralisation of the 4SS light class. As Richard King is putting up a bit of a fight. He's not losing that much ground per lap to Paul McKinnon. But that gap is starting to build between himself and the number 17, so not really sure that this race will be as close as what we were hoping. Nonetheless, you can't take anything away from this man. Paul McKinnon has just been in a league of his own in 2019. Won just about every single race he entered in this year. Won, looks like 5 out of the 6 rounds so far he has won. Sorry, 4 of the 6 rounds. He hasn't won it yet. The only round he hasn't won was at Griffith, where he didn't show up. So it was a bit nice to see someone else on the top step of the podium, but nonetheless, McKinnon is back and dominating once more. He's not even putting a wheel wrong. He is so comfortable in these karts. Well, even in that kart, well, we would hope that he is comfortable in that kart. He has designed and built that kart himself. He's running a PCR for much of the year, but now obviously he's gotten bored of winning in someone else's kart and decided he wanted to win in his own car. As we look at the bad sportsmanship flag for number 4, that is Brad Calden. So something has happened on track, and Calden will have to pay a bit of a visit to the stewards. Not really sure what that's all about, but we will leave that to the stewards to handle. Calden again tucks up behind the steering wheel. He is looking just to close that gap to Richard King. He seems to be the man on the move as we look at a bit of a move here from Oliver McLansborough on Richard Druger. So McLansborough running a Gillard kart with the Briggs engine. He tucks himself behind the steering wheel as well. Hear the engine bouncing off the limiter. This is actually a huge positive for these engines. They are limited to around 6,100 to 6,300, and that has really prolonged the life of these engines. Over in America, where the Briggs & Stratton engine is the weapon of choice for this class, I've heard of drivers that have been able to go 3 or 4 seasons on one engine with no rebuilds. Just change the oil, check the tappets, and keep racing. As McLansborough gives us a bit of a wave there. He's having the time of his life out there. Really enjoys these karts. Really enjoys this racing, young Oliver. As we look back at Matt Sydenham and Daniel Zammit, those two have swapped positions in the last few laps. Matt Sydenham in the number 83 Red Speed. Really showing some good pace in the final round of 2019. Been running around in the Retro Karting Association races as well, so few guys we have seen on these broadcasts before. Obviously Paul McKinnon, way out in front at the moment, but also Matt Sydenham. He also raced at the Winter Cup here at Lithgow City Raceway. As we focus back on Daniel Zammit, one of 3 drivers for the Hoof-Hearted team here this weekend. The Hoof-Hearted racing team, well known in the 4SKA Endurance Championship. But they decided this weekend they would throw their hand in for the sprint racing. As oh, look at that! Look at that! Calden has really reeled in Richard King there. So Calden, the man on the move, as King looks over his shoulder, he is now aware that the number 4 is right on his rear bar. So Calden just getting stronger as this race goes on. As he is right onto the back of the number 11 and applying the blowtorch again. And Calden is one of the more aggressive drivers in this field. He is not shy of having a go. Not shy to rub panels with drivers beside him. As you can see, King, he is under pressure, looking both ways. This is just giving Calden all the encouragement he needs to get onto terms and get around that number 11. Now Calden right into the slipstream of the number 11. Big part of this class is the slipstream and working together. Not too uncommon to see these drivers all bump drafting each other, as Calden does think about a move going through Siberia. It's a huge strategy, bump drafting. It's almost like watching Moto 3 sometimes, this class. Oh, Brad Calden off the track, dips 2 wheels. That's not going to help him at all. Very common mistake here at Lithgow City Raceway. That is, on paper, that hairpin does look tight, but it is a very fast corner. And it is very easy to just drop a wheel off the curb. There is a sizable drop on the exit curb, and that just drags you off the track. So Calden did a really good job to only drop 2 wheels. Some drivers will drop all 4 wheels most of the time going around the hairpin. But Calden is back onto the number 11. You can see King is just under so much pressure. He is looking over his shoulder. Yeah, again, looks over his shoulder at the number 4. So I think it's only a matter of time and we will see those 2 positions swap. Calden looking much more confident, much more comfortable in that car as he tucks himself behind the wheel again. As he pulls out of the slipstream, going into turn 1, and job done for Calden. Made that look so easy. Richard King not really putting up too much of a fight. I think he knew that Calden was coming and that Calden had a lot more pace on him. So unfortunately, Richard King drops out a second and Brad Calden back up to 2nd place. As he now tries his best to work on closing the gap to McKinnon, although I think that horse has bolted as we look back at this battle for 4th position. Oliver McLansborough still out in front ahead of Richard Druger, but Matt Sydenham, he has worked his way back onto the tail of this fight for 4th. Sort of saw McLansborough sort of look up into the sky as if to say, God, is that how many laps to go? Why can't it be the final lap now? I think he might be aware that Sydenham is joining the battle as we rejoin Paul McKinnon. He is coming up on lap traffic of Douglas Baker and Paul King. Douglas Baker from the Dubbo Kart Racing Club and Paul King from the Canberra Kart Racing Club. Paul in only his 3rd race meeting ever in karts, and he is showing a lot of pace, managing to wipe off over a second off his lap times this weekend. Unfortunately, he missed out on practice, so he has started well behind the 8 ball in comparison to his more experienced competitors. As you see Paul King look over his shoulder, he is now aware that McKinnon is coming. Blue flags will be waving shortly, I'm sure, to let Baker and King know that they are about to be lapped. McKinnon sitting ever so relaxed, 3 laps to go. He knows he's got a massive lead. He knows he can take his time getting around these 2 drivers. A bit of dust kicked up there, so obviously a driver in front of McKinnon has gone off. I wonder if that was Baker or King, as we're not really sure where those 2 lap carts have gone. I think our cameraman is actually trying to find them, but oh, hang on, there they are. They've just flashed through the background. So, job well done to Douglas Baker and Paul King. They've really sidestepped our leader so effectively. We didn't even catch where they let him through. So I suspect it was somewhere between Turn 2 and Siberia as they sidestepped Calvin and Richard King. It looks like Paul King might be trying to make a move. He does make a move, so Paul King has taken advantage of Douglas Baker trying to get out of the way of the leaders, and Paul King has made a move. So good racecraft in only his 3rd race meeting, and good presence of mind there to just take advantage of the blue flags. So McKinnon, once again, so smooth, so comfortable in his own kart. He has not even been headed. Richard King, as he starts his final lap, Richard King did get the jump at the start of this race, but it was short-lived as Paul McKinnon just powered his way past the number 11, going down the back straight. Paul McKinnon is looking to wrap up yet another perfect year. Well, actually a perfect year. He's won almost every race, as we've said earlier in the broadcast, and it looks like he is going to add another notch to his belt. So Paul McKinnon rounds the final corner and takes out the final race of 2019 for the 4SS light class in the Thundersport Tour. Brad Calden takes home 2nd and Richard King in 3rd position. And it looks like Matt Sydenham managed to get ahead of Richard Druger as well. So a great fight back from Matt Sydenham as we focus on our 2019 champion, Paul McKinnon. Another brilliant, perfect performance. As we look through the final standings for the final race of 2019, Paul McKinnon is your champion and also the winner of the final race. Brad Calden, he took home 2nd position, while Richard King and Oliver McLansborough took out 3rd and 4th. Matt Sydenham rounded out the top 5. Richard Druger in 6th position, while Ethan Bowton came home in 7th, getting ahead of Daniel Zammit. Chris Barry came home in 9th, while Drew Hamilton rounded out the top 10. As we go over the page right now, soon, as Jeffrey Amir came home in 11th, and Paul King 12th, taking home his first points in his first round, and Douglas Baker rounds out the finishers. As the champagne sprays, let's have a look at the final point scores for the 2019 season. Paul McKinnon, unheaded, 348 points ahead of Brad Calden. Richard King and Richard Druger and Aaron Lewis rounds out the top 5, and Aaron Lewis also takes home the silver trophy. So job well done to Aaron Lewis for that, and job well done to Paul McKinnon. So thank you very much for joining us for this race.